Yano, Anderson, Arambula, Bell, Bilberry Hill, Tomberry Hill, Blakesley, Block, Blumenfield, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Caballero, Calderon, Carter, Chesbro, Conway, Cook, Codo, Davis, De La Torre, De Leon, DeVore, Emerson, Ing, Evans, Fior, Fletcher, Fong, Fuentes, Fuller, Furutani, Gaines, Galgiani, Garrick, Gilmore, Hagman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Lou, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mendoza, Miller, Monning, Nava, Nestande, Nilo, Nielsen, John A. Perez, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Ruskin, Solis, Saldana, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Strickland, Swanson, Torlixon, Torres, Tarico, Tran, Valines, Yamada, Madam Speaker.
A quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask Assembly Member Marty Block to lead us in today's prayer.
Lord, help us to welcome each day as if it were our first, so that we may have enthusiasm in our souls, excitement in our hearts, and warmth in our dispositions. Help us to welcome each day as if it were our last, so that we may have an urgency in our efforts, a deep concern for the world in our minds, and the peace and love of God in our hearts. Amen.
Thank you. We ask our guests and visitors to now stand and join us in the flag salute. Assemblymember Huffman will lead us in today's pledge. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, January 21st, 2010. The Assembly met at 9:30 a.m. Honorable Israel Hall III, Assistant Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dotson Wilson at the desk. Assistant Clerk
Mr.
Timothy.
Fuhr moves. Mr. Hagman seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions. There are none. Reports from committees will be deemed read and amended and deemed adopted. Messages from the Governor. There are none. Messages from the Senate. There are none. Motions and resolutions will be our next item. Under motions and resolutions, Mr. Block.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent for Assembly Members Bass and Brownlee to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection, the request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to allow Assembly Members Bass, Fuller, Garrick, Jones, and Nilo to speak on an adjourn in memory today.
Without objection, the request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to order third reading file item 79, AB 1263, Strickland, to the first day consent calendar.
Without objection, the request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, at the request of the authors, please remove file item A33, AB 1369, Davis, from the inactive file.
The clerk will note.
Mr. Speaker, at the request of the authors, I am giving a one-day notice of intent to remove the following bills from the inactive file. File item A2, AB 347, Block, and file item A3, AB 1538, Ma and Chesbro.
The clerk will note. Members and guests, direct your attention to the rear of the chambers. Madam Speaker, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Daphna Ziman. Daphna Ziman is probably the only person I know who was both a punk rock record producer and an advisor to Harvard University. I bet you didn't expect me to mention that. Daphna is definitely known in the Los Angeles area, but throughout the nation for the work that she has done over the years on foster care. This is National Mentoring Month, and I have a resolution here to honor her for National Mentoring Month. In addition to being an outstanding mentor herself, Daphna pioneered the Los Angeles County mentoring model, which presents a viable solution to the challenges facing children in foster care and is a pilot program for national replication. And members, you know that I've worked for many years here since I've been in the legislature on foster care and have had focus groups with hundreds of foster children, and really almost without exception, one thing that foster children always tell you is that they would love to have an adult in their life who's not paid to be there, which is, of course, another description of a mentor. She's the chair and founder of Children Uniting Nations, a dynamic group that is making a huge difference in the lives of at-risk and foster children. I also want to ask you to join me in welcoming Ken Martinet, who's the CEO of Catholic Big Brothers and Big Sisters. For nearly 80 years, Big Brothers and Big Sisters have matched youth between the ages of 7 and 18 with volunteer adults who serve as role models, friends, and mentors. We also have Cynthia Hurd and Brandon Keel of Children Uniting Nations here today to accept this resolution. Members, National Mentoring Month matters because you can't overstate the importance of mentoring to young people. So I wanted to ask you to join me in welcoming them to the Assembly, but also in presenting this resolution on behalf of the Assembly. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Ms. Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd also like to call your attention to 4 extraordinarily inspiring teachers who are recipients of this school year's esteemed Milliken Educator Awards bestowed by the Milliken Family Foundation. Since 1987, more than 2,400 educators throughout the country have been presented this award for furthering excellence in education through quality teaching and leadership. I know Assemblywoman Wilmer Carter is sorry she couldn't be here today for this tribute, but is glad she was able to attend an earlier celebration held in her district in San Bernardino for San Bernardino teacher Marissa Rivas. Please join me in recognizing Ms. Rivas, San Diego teacher Jamie Enox, Los Angeles teacher Roberto Gonzalez, and Linwood teacher Ana Higuera. And please join me and give them a welcoming hand of congratulations.
Congratulations. Business on the daily file. Second reading, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 781, 25, 113, 223, 1097, 1204, 1224, 1229, 1414, 1431, 1433, 1502, 1524, 35, 127, 177, 223, 17, 384, 408, 424, 558, 584, 633, 658, 984, 1054, 1199, 1375, 1378, 1391, 1436, 1504, 1533, 1178 with amendments, 1223 with amendments, 1225 with amendments, 1230, 1239 with amendments, 1518 with amendments, 41 with amendments, 391 with amendments, 498 with amendments, 537 with amendments, 549 with amendments, 551 with amendments, 656 with amendments, 953 with amendments, 963 with amendments, 973 with amendments, 977 with amendments, 1088 with amendments, 674 with amendments, 1155 with amendments, 12 with amendments, and Senate Bill 205 with amendments.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Returning to motions and resolutions, Mr. Block.
Mr. Speaker, at the request of Mr. Hagman, I request unanimous consent to order file item 9, AB 1414 Hill, to the third reading file for our next legislative day.
Without objection, the request is granted. Concurrence in Senate amendments, pass and retain. Conference reports pending, pass and retain. Reconsideration, motion is consent, continue. Assembly, third reading. File item number 72. Mr. Chesborough, are you ready to proceed on this item? File item 72, the clerk will read.
Assembly Joint Resolution 26 by Assemblymember Chesborough and others relative to climate change.
Mr. Chesborough, you may open on the measure.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, AJR 26 urges the United States Congress, as it contemplates how to address climate change at the national level, to create a comprehensive plan and funding for states to address climate change impacts. We know that climate change is already affecting California in major ways. Sea level has risen by as much as 7 inches along the California coast over the last century. These impacts are increasing, and in the process, they're resulting in erosion, degradation of water quality, and threats to our fisheries and marine life, their food webs, in ways that we have still not fully understood. It's also a direct threat to the infrastructure of our state. Every major airport in our state is just a little bit above sea level, and as well as major highways, as well as schools, homes, all of the things that we need to have an economy, a healthy economy, and to live safely in California. Our state understands the importance of addressing climate impacts today. The Natural Resources Agency, in coordination with other state agencies, has recently developed the state's first strategy for identifying and preparing for these occurring and expected climate change impacts. It's imperative to urge Congress to support state strategies to address climate change impacts and fund implementation of such strategies for the health of our precious natural resources and our communities. This resolution highlights the need to take action in planning for the real effects of climate change impacts on California's natural resources, human communities, and our economy. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further debate, the first motion is for co-authors, Mr. Chesborough. First roll call is for co-authors. Open the roll. First roll is for co-authors. The clerk will close the roll. We have 30 co-authors. The next motion is on the measure. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 This bill requires 41. All members vote who require vote. Mr. Chesborough moves the call. Item number 73, pass and retain. Item number 74, Mr. Anderson, are you ready to proceed? The clerk will read
Assembly Bill 1399 by Assemblymember Anderson, an act relating to local government.
Mr. Anderson, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Assembly Bill 1399 closes a loophole in the ethics law This straightforward bill prohibits the local public officials from making taxpayer-funded vehicles and credit cards available to immediate family members. AB 1399 is supported by 6 unions, 2 taxpayer groups, and 21 bipartisan co-authors. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no additional members, Mr. Garrick. No. Seeing no additional members looking to be recognized, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 53, noes 0. Measure passes. Item number 75, pass and retain. Item number 76, Ms. Brownlee, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 139 by Assemblymember Brownlee, an act relating to local government.
Ms. Brownlee, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 139 is a measure authorizing county boards of supervisors to hold regular meetings at a location within the county other than the county seat. This would maximize public participation and give residents throughout the region the opportunity to become better engaged in issues directly affecting their quality of life. This bill has received bipartisan support, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no additional members seeking to be recognized, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 53, noes 0. The measure passes. Item 77 is pass and retain. Items 78 and 79 pass and retain. This concludes the business on the daily file. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Without objection, we will return to file item 71. Mr. Swanson, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1586 by Assemblymember Swanson, an act relating to transportation.
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. AB 1586, the Bay Area Rapid Transit BART Public Safety Accountability Act, addresses serious local concerns and issues as a result of a tragic killing of Mr. Oscar Grant by a BART police officer. Legislation is the result of a coalition of interest parties coming together to develop a solution that they could all agree on. This solution involved the BART board, local churches, community organization, and local law enforcement. It has received no votes, and I ask for your aye vote.
Question and debate, Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is a bittersweet vote for me. I am going to support this out of the due diligence and respect to Assemblymember Swanson. This is not the bill that I envisioned. It is not strong enough. It does not present enough independent oversight. However, the BART board, even though this is not codified, has promised has promised that the kind of independent oversight that the terrible incidents that have occurred, particularly over a 20-year history with the BART police and the murder of many innocent people, they have promised that they would have a stronger, more independent citizen oversight. Again, that is not codified. It is not codified in this bill. It was in a bill that I presented to the Appropriations Committee, which did not get out. I wish this bill the best of luck. I wish BART the best of luck. Two independent reports, Reuben Myers and the Noble reports, addressed the incident of BART's police and how deficient they were in communication, in chain of command, and how they have done, frankly, a lousy job in the past 20 years. This bill takes the first step. Without my office's intervention and initiation, this bill would not exist. I urge an aye vote. I hope that we can return and get this bill amplified in the future. It's not a good thing for the Assembly to be under the thumb of only one group.
Seeing no further debate, Mr. Swanson, you may close.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, this bill is supported by a broad coalition in the community, supported by BART, is also supported by PORAC, local churches, and the family of the victim in this case. And so I urge the aye vote of this chamber and move this measure forward to the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 56, noes 0. The measure passes. Without objection, we'll now return to file item number 57. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 122 by Assemblymember Cotto, an act relating to gaming and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Cotto, you may open.
I wasn't paying attention. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I am asking for concurrence on Senate amendments for AB 122. This bill ratifies the gaming compact between the state of California and the Pinoleville Pomo Nation. The compact was executed by the governor on March the 10th of 2009. This is a federally recognized Indian tribe. The GO committee conducted a hearing concerning ratification of this compact at the same time that we did the Upper Lake Pomo Nation. As a follow-up to that, we have received correspondence from Mendocino County Council concerning the progress that they are making. They see no problems, or they anticipate that they're going to resolve and agree to come up with an agreement where all issues can be resolved. Again, this compact assists the Pinoleville Pomo Nation in addressing problems of high unemployment and poverty, as well as providing health, housing, and educational support for its members. And I ask for your aye vote, members.
Mr. Anderson.
I also rise in support of this. There was a lot of concern over whether they were working with the county or not. We did receive a letter from the county council last week, and they've given approval that they're in support of this, and I urge an aye vote.
You may close, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on this important compact.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This bill has an urgency clause. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This bill requires 54 votes. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 54, noes 1 on the urgency. Ayes 54, noes 1 on the measure. The bill passes. Members, we now move to our supplemental file. File item 201, Assembly Bill 127 by Mr. Jeffries. Mr. Jeffries, are you prepared? I'm sorry? The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 127 by Assemblymember Jeffries, an act relating to volunteer service.
Mr. Jeffries, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 127 regards the California Volunteers. It is a state agency that is established by executive order only. California Volunteers manages programs and initiatives to create a number of Californians involved with to create services for volunteers throughout California. They also work in cooperation with the Health and Human Services Agency, California Emergency Management Agency, and other nonprofit organizations. Most notable during these tough budget times, California Volunteers collects less than 2% of their budget from the State General Fund. In order to ensure that California Volunteers can continue to exist, regardless whoever the next governor is, I offer AB 127, which would codify California Volunteers in statute. I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no other members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 57, noes 0. The measure passes. Moving on to file item number 202, Assembly Bill 177 by Mr. Ruskin. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 177 by Assemblymember Ruskin and others, an act relating to public contracts.
Mr. Ruskin, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 177 addresses the problems associated with individuals and businesses that either seek to improperly obtain or retain small business or disabled veteran business certification, bidding preferences, or participation in state contracts. The bill increases and conforms penalties for persons who falsely engage in activities relating to the Small Business Procurement and Contract Act, including small businesses, micro businesses, and disabled veteran-owned business enterprise. The bill has received support from all, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 59, noes 0. The measure passes. File item number 203, pass and retain. File item number 204, pass and retain. File item number 205, Assembly Bill 584 by Ms. Huber. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 584 by Assemblymember Huber, an act relating to neighborhood electric vehicles.
Ms. Huber, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 584 seeks to allow the County of Amador and the cities of Jackson, Sutter Creek, and Amador City to establish a neighborhood electric vehicle transportation plan. They have already studied part of this plan. This just allows them to go one step further in the process. It still requires their input from Caltrans and from local law enforcement, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 60, noes 0. The measure passes. File item 206, Assembly Bill 658 by Ms. Hayashi. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 658 by Assemblymember Hayashi, an act relating to taxation.
Ms. Hayashi, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill allows taxpayers to make charitable contributions to the California Police Activities League, also known as CalPAL, on their personal income tax return. It will establish a new funding source for this program, the state's largest juvenile prevention program, with 300,000 youth participating. The bill requires the Franchise Tax Board to report the amount and source of contributions to the state CalPAL, who would administer contribution to local chapters. Administrative costs to the Franchise Tax Board were resolved, and there is no opposition to the bill. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 60, noes 1. The measure passes. File item number 207 is pass and retain. File item number 208, Assembly Bill 1378 by Mr. Perez. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1378 by Assemblymember V. Manuel Perez, an act relating to workforce investment.
Mr. Perez, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1378 would help ensure that veterans obtain competitive workforce skills and the opportunity to obtain good-paying jobs that are sustainable. The bill proposes that the state undertake a comprehensive, systematic, and outcome-oriented look at how it currently serves the workforce development needs of our veterans. This assessment would provide key information on how California could have a more integrated and successful approach to providing veteran services with existing resources, including outreach, skill assessments, training, and job placement. Members, we know that California receives $18 million annually from the federal government. We also know that approximately 182 dedicated staff are employed at EDD and one-stop career centers to work with California veterans. However, veterans do not feel that they are being adequately served. Concerns have been raised by the veterans advocacy community that this dedicated funding is not used to its maximum potential, and this is why I have introduced AB 1378. This bill has had unanimous bipartisan support from all committees. There is no known opposition, and I ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, we've had the opportunity to really study and understand some of the barriers that are hampering our veterans from returning and transitioning into civilian life. Unfortunately, the state of California has a very low record in easing the transition relative to getting our veterans employed. For example, the EDD only has a success rate of 52% of our veterans being placed into jobs, and this is very low relative to other states. So this bill that my colleague Manuel Perez is putting forward is very timely, very necessary, and I stand here to ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Perez, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every veteran should be afforded the opportunity for a bright future, and they should be afforded all the tools and resources necessary to achieve success in their lives as civilians, and especially now, upon returning home. It is our responsibility, it is our obligation to do just that, to provide them those opportunities. I ask for your aye vote.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 62, noes 0. The measure passes. File item 209, Assembly Bill 1436 by Mr. Portantino. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1436 by Assemblymember Portantino, an act relating to post-secondary educational institutions.
Mr. Portantino, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1436 requires the Board of Governors of the California Community Colleges, the Board of Trustees of the California State University, the California Post-Secondary Education Commission, and the Student Aid Commission and auxiliary organizations to make available on the Internet a live audio broadcast of their public meetings. This bill is about giving the public access to their systems and how they perform, especially when some of these organizations meet on the same day. It makes it very difficult for the public to attend. I believe this bill got off the floor with no votes last year, and I requestfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no members seeking recognition, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 63, noes 0. The measure passes. I have a few announcements. Tuesday, January 26th, check-in session. Wednesday, January 27th, floor session from 9:30 a.m. to noon. Thursday, January 28th, floor session. Friday, January 29th, floor session upon call of speaker. We also have the Banking and Finance Committee that will be meeting in room 444 upon adjournment. Request to adjourn in memory. The following members were previously granted permission to speak on adjourn in memories today. Okay. Mr. Nilo.
Was that Mr. O'Neill?
I'm sorry, Mr. Nilo?
Was that Mr. O'Neill?
Yes, Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, occasionally a prominent member of our community, and even one with whom I'm acquainted, will pass away, and the fact passes me. But I want to make sure that we do adjourn in the memory of Cecil Mark, who passed away last year, almost a half a year ago, or a little bit more than a half a year ago, actually. Cecil was an acquaintance of mine, a very active member in this community. He actually was born in Yuba City, but he attended University of California at Berkeley, and he served some time in the Navy during World War II, and then he came to Sacramento and had a very, very successful career in the construction industry. He was a partner in the firm that actually was the general contractor that did the major restoration of this building back in the mid-'80s. Many of us who live in this town obviously remember that, and we all appreciate the grandeur of these chambers, which are definitely improved by that project. He was an active member of the community. In fact, at one point he considered running for the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, about which I chatted with him. But he had many other activities. He died from the complications of Parkinson's disease, which he suffered from at the end of his life, which is not a pleasant experience. So our thoughts are with his wife Lois and his daughters, and I thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to adjourn in the memory of Cecil Mark.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to join my colleague, Mr. Nilo, in adjourning in memory of Mr. Mark. I had the opportunity to work with his daughter back in Washington, D.C. in the Reagan administration. We became good friends, and his family greeted me when I returned in my drive back to California in 1985. I stayed with them up in Lake Tahoe, and they treated me like a member of the family. We grew close, and the loss of Mr. Cecil Mark is a significant one to the building industry in the state of California. As my colleague identified, one of his proudest moments, as his wife Lois shared with me just last week, was the opportunity he had to restore the Capitol that we live and work in every single day. His family was fifth-generation Californians. He and his wife both, I believe, attended Cal, and we're very proud of it. And I ask again that we adjourn in memory of Cecil Mark.
Ms. Fuller. Sorry, Dr. Fuller.
Mr. Speaker and members, I rise today in memory of a respected water advocate, Stephen K. Hall. Stephen Hall was not only one of the most well-known advocates for water policy reform in California, he was also a family man, raising 2 children and enjoying his 3 grandchildren. Steve was born in Greenland in 1951 and earned his bachelor's degree in marketing and economics from the California State University, Fresno, in 1973. After beginning his water career in 1976, he served in a variety of appointed and advisory capacities under 4 different governors. He served on myriad different boards, including the Board of Directors of the California Water Institute, the California Infrastructure Coalition, the State Reclamation Board, the UC Davis Land, Air, and Water Advisory Committee, and the California Bay Delta Public Advisory Committee. In our work with Aqua over the last 30 years, my husband Russell and I have grown to respect the leadership of Steve. He has left his mark on water infrastructure in California, and his leadership will be sorely missed. It is my honor to adjourn in memory of a man who let nothing hold him back from accomplishing those things that he believed California needed. Thank you, Stephen Hall.
Thank you, Dr. Fuller. Madam Speaker.
Yes, members, I rise today to adjourn in memory of Ruby Jean Spann. Miss Ruby, as she was known in the labor movement, passed away on December 11th. She was a longtime employee of the UCLA Medical Center. While there, she was a strong voice for workers in the collective bargaining process. Miss Ruby rose to serve as president of AFSCME Local 3299. At the time of her passing, she was vice president of the AFSCME Retirees Chapter 36 and president of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, Southern California. Miss Ruby was devoted to her family, her church, Trinity Baptist, and was very active in the improved Benevolent Protective Order of Elks. Please join me in sending our condolences to Miss Ruby's family, many friends, and her brothers and sisters in the trade union movement on their loss. Mr. Speaker, I have one more adjourn in memory to do, and this is for a Capitol staffer. And I would just note that it seems as though in the last month or so we've lost 3 Capitol staffers. I'm adjourning in memory of Melinda Melendez. She was a long-time light in the Capitol. As one of her colleagues commented, no one said no to Melinda Melendez. And it wasn't because of power or pressure, it was because Melinda always fought the good fight and did it with grace and caring. Melinda started her career as a classroom teacher, bilingual education resource teacher, and program coordinator. It was then Assemblyman John Vasconcelos who first brought her into the Capitol, noting that while Melinda may not have had as much experience as others for the job, she had the most potential. And for more than 30 years, she delivered on that potential, including working for 3 different speakers to help promote educational excellence and educational equity for all students in California. Melinda was a founding member of the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Project, and in that capacity, as well as in her Capitol position, she served as a devoted mentor to many young people. Max Espinosa, my higher education staffer, said, quote, "Melinda mentored and guided me and supported me, kept me out of trouble, and offered friendship and many laughs. We could all use someone like that to make a difference in our lives." Most recently, Melinda worked as senior education consultant for Senator Gloria Romero. She also gave of her time serving on advisory boards, including CSU Sacramento, the Journal of Latino in Education, and on the board of directors for the Girl Scouts. Since her passing, we've heard from the leaders Melinda worked for, telling of the contributions she made to school children in California. And Helen, the elevator operator, stopped by to share how much Melinda would light up when talking about her grandchild. Please join me in sending the Assembly's deep condolences to Melinda's son, Joaquin Peterson, her daughter-in-law, Donna, and her granddaughter, Madeline. Also to her mother, Lupe Melendez, sisters Velma Palmer and Stephanie Connor, her foster brother, Frank Sandoval, and her many family friends, the one Melinda made here at the Capitol and the ones she made every place she went. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Jones.
Mr. Speaker, members, I rise to ask that we adjourn in memory of Patricia M. Habel, a longtime Capitol aide who died on January 24, 2010, at the age of 49. Ms. Habel leaves her husband, legislative advocate Timothy J. Howe, and her son, John T. Howe, 14 years of age. After graduation from Rio Americana High School in 1978, Ms. Habel attended the University of California, Davis, graduating in 1982 with a degree in political science. After working on the re-election campaign of Senator Leroy Green, she went to work in the district office of Congressman Vic Fazio. In 1985, she began 20 years of excellent service with the California State Legislature. During her time in the Capitol, she served as committee consultant to the Assembly Revenue and Taxation Committee under Assemblyman Johan Claes, legislative assistant to Assemblyman Tom Umberg, and Capitol Chief of Staff to Assembly members Kerry Mazzoni and Betty Carnett. From 2001 to 2003, during the Governor Gray Davis administration, she also served as Assistant Secretary of Education for Legislative Affairs under Education Secretary Mazzoni. Her last job in public service was as director of the Women's Caucus under Assemblymember Patty Berg. In March of 2007, she left public service in the legislature to spend time with her son. Ms. Habel was known for her wonderful, positive personality. To know her was to like and to love her. She was strong and spirited. She was always cheerful, supportive, positive, friendly, and non-judgmental. Besides being a loving and devoted wife, mother, and daughter, she was progressive-minded and loved nature. She loved to travel and was a gourmet cook. She will be remembered equally by friends and family and those of us here in the Capitol community whose lives was touched by hers. Services will be on Friday, January 29th at 1:30 p.m. at Trinity Cathedral, located at 27th and Capitol Avenues here in Sacramento. The family asks that remembrances be made to the Sacramento SPCA or the Sacramento Food Bank. I ask that we adjourn in her memory.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Members, please bring the names forward to the desk. The clerk will read the remaining requests to adjourn in memory. That's okay. The remaining requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Members, we now return to file item number 72, AJR 26 by Mr. Chesborough. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 41, noes 17. The measure passes. Correction to the announcement regarding the Banking and Finance Committee. The Banking and Finance Committee will meet at 2 p.m., not upon adjourn of the session. Again, Banking and Finance will meet in room 444 at 2 p.m. I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Block moves. Mr. Blakesley seconds that the House stand adjourned until Wednesday, September 27th at 9:30 a.m. The quorum call is lifted.